Alrighty, let's do this. Welcome back to progress. How to continually progress your physique, like continuously, non-stop. Because progress will not always be linear. That is important to know, and that's fine. Like it's important to know. That's why we do all these graphs and we track all your weights and things like that. But the goal is always to make it as linear as possible. Obviously, that happens by keeping those variables as consistent as possible. But there are a few things that we can look at in terms of like nuances within progression schemes, like training wise. So there's a few things that we can do to basically do. Like, the goal is to do more every week or every time we do it, progress. And there's a few ways that we can do that. Number one, mechanical tension. This is the one we focus on. This is why the sets are like relatively the same all the time, because I want you to get stronger over the same sets, the same rep ranges, at the same intensity. And that way we know that when the weight on the bar moves up, the total volume moves up. Like guaranteed. Because every variable is the same except for weight that goes up. That means total volume goes up. When you start to play with the other variables, it's a little harder to track, as we'll talk about in a minute. This one's pretty consistent. Like the way to track this, obviously, is pretty consistent and reliable. You just continuously force, like, technically a new stimulus because it's more reps than last time or more weight than last time. And just every variable is the same except for the volume that goes up from the weight on the bar. Another way we can do this is increase the set. So if you guys know, like, I think it's RPE, Dr. Mike Israel, 3DMJ did this a lot as well. And this is all about like progressing over like 6 to 8 week periods, generally starting with like 2 or 3 sets, working up to like 5 to 6 sets. Your intensity also starts to, like, let's say if you're rating it out of 10, like 6 out of 10, then it goes to 7, then it goes to 8, then it goes to 9, and then you're like quote unquote overreaching higher volume weeks. You'll go to like failure and the highest amount of sets. The only issue is this: you get a lot of fatigue that comes with it, and you have to deload way more often. Way more often, like every 6 weeks. You got to combat the high fatigue. You got to make sure that you deload at the right time. It's a little bit more complex of counting the volume upwards. You've got to be very good at training to do it. Like if you're not very good at hack squats, doing 6 sets of hack squats, like that sets 3, 4, and 5 are going to be so difficult from a neuromuscular perspective because you're so tired. Which is why sometimes just keeping things down towards 2 makes a lot of sense. So from a coaching standpoint, this is much more complex to people who aren't as advanced. Right, this is like something that you could take someone who's a bit more advanced through, and the programming gets a little bit more specific and periodic. It's no more advantageous. I much prefer the first one, but you can definitely do it this way. Then you can increase reps. This is like the lesser known of progression because you start with, like, let's say 6 to 10 reps, then you go to 12 to 15, then you go 15 to 20. Y3U used to do this. What's his name? Neil Yoda Hill. So he would have a heavy week, a light week, a medium week, and he would like rotate through. Reps get higher over time. Your volume obviously moves up, but like you're limited by like reps, and then you're limited by time. Okay, let's go to 20 reps, 30 reps, 40 reps, 50 reps. Okay, well, now I'm out of time. I need to go home. So that's where the limit is. And like most of the research at the moment points towards stimulus being relatively similar between, if the intensity is the same, the stimulus is really similar between 8 and 30 reps. So the conversation much more becomes about which ones are energy efficient, which exercises are energy efficient, which ones feel the best, and then just fail between those rep ranges. Now, one of my favorite ways to improve is improving form. I think naturally your form starts worse and then it gets better and better and better. As your form gets better, you recruit more muscle. But it's underrated because, like, as you get good and you start chasing numbers in the logbook, you also get worse. And the analogy you guys might have heard in your check-in sometimes that I've said is like, if you get 0.10% worse, 0.1% worse every week, and you do that for a year, that's 5% worse and your form's rubbish. So periodically checking your form, and this is why we do this with you guys every 8 to 10 weeks, makes a lot of sense. But ultimately, if you can make your form as perfect as possible to increase the stimulus on the muscle, and if you can do the same stimulus from less weight, you should. For example, if you can do 100 kilos and get the same exact type of trophy stimulus as 500 kilos on whatever the machine is, do that, because 500 kilos going through a joint is significantly more than 100 kilos. And we've got to think about longevity. So film it, watch it back, improve it, repeat it. So my take is like, or the one more coaching take, weight on bar is king. Focus on the stimulus first and then move the weight up. But like weight on bar is king as a volume progression. I'd say reduce your total intensity from like 10, like balls to the wall failure, to like 8 or 9. I think you're still yielding that really high motor unit threshold, which basically just means if 10 out of 10 is maximum muscle recruitment, like 9 is still maximum, 8 is still pretty high, and more muscle recruitment, more hypertrophy, but also more fatigue. And that final rep right up here has so much fatigue for potentially not a lot of like stimulus. So just dropping 1 or 2 off and then maybe getting another set makes a lot of sense, which is why you guys will notice with us, we start at 2 or 3 sets and try and work to 3 or 4 sets and try and see what that tolerance is for level. I like to find the limit, manage it effectively, train for as long as possible, and then just deload when necessary. Some of you guys have deloaded after 16 weeks, 10 weeks, 8 weeks, 6 weeks. Like, you will have individual capabilities. It just depends on kind of where that works. I've taken a lot of you through different types of deloads. Number one, the one I do most of you guys is approach 1. I think when we're so all in and focused on the goal, just taking 3 to 5 days completely off works really, really well. And all we do, just don't train, no cardio, because it increases inflammation. If your steps are like 12, 13, 14, 15K, we'll bring them back down to 10, but 8 to 10K is fine. We'll bring your food up if you're in a deficit, or just like rest day food if you're in a surplus, just to basically recover and have enough to recover. It's the fastest way to reduce fatigue, especially if you're an all-in person. Like, I think it's easier to be all out rather than like dip your toe in. Go and try and do approach 2, which we'll talk about, and then like find it really difficult to hold yourself back like I do. Approach 2 being, you could just do a week's worth of training at 50% volume and reduced intensity. But for me, going in and trying to get my head around a set of just like stopping early and not quite quantifying that, it doesn't bode well for me, because I'll probably go to failure. So I much prefer approach 1. But you can definitely do that. 50% training volume, drop a set off here and there, drop your RP to 7 out of 10 difficulty. The good thing about this is that you can keep the movements fresh, so you don't like get that real soreness post deload, and the movement's still pretty good. You're not like relearning anything. So we'll just summarize it now, guys. Progress comes in many different forms. Don't be afraid to try different ones of them. But obviously, like, always look at your form. That's why we always look at your videos. Don't just chase getting stronger at the sacrifice of form or safety. You can improve form, weight. You can improve form, and if form is the same, improve weight, add sets, and depends on your fatigue level, right? And just look out for your sign to deload. It's important that we don't push through that because it feels shit. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this one. We'll see you in the next lesson.